ago at its close, the FTSE 100 was down 55 points at 75.01. The pound, it buys $1.25 and €1.12. LBC weather, dry, warm and muggy this evening and overnight, a low of 15 degrees. Tomorrow, hot and sunny, a high of 39 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Philip Chrysikos.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, it's been a day of ceremony, a day of history, a day of big uplifting speeches, and now it's a day of intense activity in Number 10, a day of drama. As it would appear, a very large number of ministers and cabinet ministers are losing their jobs as of today. Boris Johnson, who went along to Buckingham Palace earlier on today and officially became the Prime Minister, has used this much vaunted energy to get the ball rolling. And I have to say, we will, over the course of this hour, listen to much of the speech that he gave on the steps of Number 10 as our new Prime Minister, and it was full of optimism. And I'm keen to debate with you. Do you think the optimism that Johnson is showing is justified? But before I do any of that, I want to go to LBC's political editor, Theo Usherwood. Theo, a lot of people losing their jobs.
Jeremy Hunt, the Foreign Secretary, is now the former Foreign Secretary. He was offered defence again this evening by Boris Johnson, but said it would be the wrong thing to do because it would, of course, be taking Penny Mordaunt's job. She was sacked as Defence Secretary earlier. Of course, it is worth remembering that Penny Mordaunt, a Leaver, was the star endorsement at Jeremy Hunt's campaign launch 6 weeks ago. And his spokesman saying this evening that he had declined the offer to take defence and so was going to return to the backbenches. Another Jeremy to be sacked was Jeremy Wright, the Culture Secretary. Unsurprising, given he's a staunch Remainer. Boris Johnson's New Look cabinet is not going to try and bridge the divide between Leavers and Remainers as the way that Theresa May tried to do 3 years ago. Everybody who joins is going to have to be signed up to the policy that unless the European Union is willing to give some major concessions, i.e. dropping the backstop over the summer, then that cabinet are going to be signed up to leaving on October the 31st without a deal. That is going to be the price that they are going to have to pay in order to accept a job. Sajid Javid has just gone into Number 10 and he is expected to come out with the job of being Chancellor of the Exchequer, moving into next door into Number 11. Priti Patel, who of course lost her job a year ago as International Development Secretary, is expected to be made Home Secretary. She has also gone into Number 10 Downing Street to be given her new brief.
I do notice, though, that whilst there are lots and lots of Remainers that have gone or been sacked or voluntarily gone in some cases, like Rory Stewart and David Gauke and indeed the former Chancellor Hammond, but also there are some Leavers that have lost their jobs. Liam Fox, sacked as International Secretary. Chris Grayling also has sacked as Transport Secretary. So some Leavers have gone as well.
Leavers have gone as well. The thing about Liam Fox was that he openly questioned Boris Johnson on GATT 24. Boris Johnson insisting that 5B, paragraph 5B, meant that it would be possible to leave on a zero tariff, zero tax basis in October the 31st if the European Union agreed to it. Liam Fox questioned that. Of course, he was a Leave campaigner. He was given the brief of International Trade Secretary. Didn't manage to, of course, sign any trade deals because we haven't left the European Union. And even if we had, of course, the regulatory alignment with the backstop would have prevented him from ultimately doing so. He has lost his job. It'll be interesting to see whether Boris Johnson decides to keep that department on its own or to reconfigure it when he makes his appointments in the next hour and a half, 2 hours.
And behind the scenes, some things going on that are perhaps significant. I'm talking about Dominic Cummings. I'm talking about many of the Vote Leave staff now appear to have pretty top jobs in Downing Street.
It's a very good point to make Nigel, is that Dominic Cummings going in as an advisor into Number 10 Downing Street, he orchestrated the Vote Leave campaign during the 2016 referendum. Of course, that ran in tandem with your Leave.eu campaign.
Yeah.
And then Rob Oxley is going to be press secretary, we understand. Lee Kane, who was on that campaign, is going to be director of communications. He's been with Boris for quite a while. Why it's important is that it shows that Boris Johnson is putting Number 10 into a campaign mode.
Absolutely.
He recognises, in all likelihood, he is going to have to go back to the country. And it is also, in this respect, worth looking at his cabinet appointments. He is probably going to have, on August the 1st, a majority of 2, and yet he has taken the decision to put some big names on their bums, on the back benches. He is taking that risk. He knows that in order to deliver all of the promises that he made just after 4 o'clock this afternoon on the steps of Number 10 Downing Street, he's not going to be able to do that with a majority of 2. And so all the indications now are that Boris Johnson is preparing at some point in the short to medium term a general election.
Yeah, and the other thing about Dominic Cummings, really interestingly, is that he saw the referendum in 2016 as the first of 2 referendums. He thought after a negotiation we should perhaps go back to the people and have a second referendum. I just wonder whether, at some point, a second referendum could be Boris Johnson's only way out of this.
I think it will be a general election is the only way out of it. I think, but this is just the way I see it panning out, is that I think Parliament, at the moment, you have a referendum result that doesn't fit with the makeup of Parliament. And what needs to happen in order for Brexit to be delivered or not to be delivered is that there needs to be a realignment. And ultimately, that's going to be done in a general election. You'll have, some sort of coalition between the Liberal Democrats, SNP and Labour, and then there'll be a coalition of some description, and you'll know much more about this than I, between the Brexit Party and the Conservative Party.
That's what President Trump thinks, but I'm not sure that's certain. But you're right. There is a. No, I agree with you, but I think I have to say now, Theo, I think the chances of a general election this autumn are really getting quite high.
Yes, I think they are, but I think that given Boris Johnson's speech, his pitch, as you rightly pointed out, with optimism,
yes,
of making the case for a country that believes in itself, versus Jeremy Corbyn's pitch, I genuinely think that he is trying to make the case for a renewed Conservative government, and that would have to be put to the country in order to change the arithmetic in the House of Commons.
I think it's coming down the tracks. Theo, thank you. Run away. I'm off to Cottage Green to speak to Daniel Kaczynski, Conservative MP for Shrewsbury and Atcham, and a supporter of Boris. Daniel, was that a good speech from our new Prime Minister?
It was a tremendous speech, Nigel, and Boris is tapping into what many of us believe, which is a genuine confidence and belief in our country, and rather than the prevarication, procrastination and the lack of decision-making that we've had over the last 3 years, he is nailing his colours very, very tightly to the mast that he is determined to pull out on the 31st of October. Many companies in my constituency are now saying they are just sick and tired of the delays and the uncertainty, and they are demanding that we pull out of the European Union as planned on the 31st of October.
Yeah, no, and I think from the point of view of business and investment, let's just get this done and move on. I get that. I understand that. But Daniel, there are 99 days left until that date of the 31st of October. And it seemed to me that what Boris Johnson's really been saying is he's going to go and cut a new deal with the EU. Now, whether that's a totally new deal or whether it's a reheated version of Theresa May's treaty, do you actually think that in 99 days, given that Brussels is closed for the whole of August, that he's really going to get that renegotiation and get it through Parliament?
I think he has to demonstrate and show to the British electorate that he has, in the limited time that he has, gone the extra mile to try to make the European Union realise that it's not in their interests for us to have a no deal, bearing in mind that they have a trade surplus with us of £96 billion a year. But if Monsieur Barnier and others refuse to understand and recognise that the withdrawal agreement has spectacularly failed to be ratified on 3 separate occasions, the first time the biggest government defeat in our nation's history, then he is living in a parallel universe. And he needs to understand that there is going to be a managed no deal on the 31st of October.
And how does that, Daniel, how does that get a parliamentary majority?
Well, of course, and you are going to be vital in this, Nigel. What I would say is, if you could have seen how this Remainer Parliament has tried to block and blackmail and prevent the will of the British people being exerted, I'm sure you know what's been going on in the House of Commons, and that's why a general election ultimately is going to be inevitable, because it's vital and essential that the complexion of Britain and British citizens is represented in the House of Commons. That is not the case at the moment, and I very much hope when we're talking about alliances that, quite frankly, you, sir, will understand that in this Herculean ongoing battle of wills, it is not in our interest for Mr. Corbyn to become the Prime Minister, because he will genuinely try to overturn the result of the referendum.
And Daniel, tell me, as a Boris loyalist and as somebody who has come to the Leave campaign and believes in it as strongly as you now do, are you expecting a phone call from Boris?
Well, I've learned from you in my many discussions that I have had with you that it is not in our interests to remain in the European Union. I must admit, some years ago, rather, sort of undecided. But, more and more of us are now realizing that their conduct towards us is inconsistent and incompatible with our ongoing membership. And yes, I, like all the other Tory MPs, are standing by our phones to see if we're going to get something. Yes, of course I am.
Right, well, I wish you well, Daniel. Thank you very much indeed. And Boris supporter there, Daniel Kaczynski, very, very upbeat. And look, let's be honest about it, whether you're a Tory supporter or not, a Boris supporter or not, he has given a good first speech as Prime Minister on the steps of Downing Street. Whether he can deliver it is an entirely separate issue. But as an opening speech, displaying some optimism, I think actually that is a pretty good thing. I wonder whether you agree with me. Let me know on 0345 6060 973. For now, you're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC at 6:15, and time for the news headlines with Philip.
Boris Johnson has used his first speech as Prime Minister to insist Brexit will be delivered, adding he will give the country the leadership it deserves. Speaking outside Number 10, the Conservative leader said he would meet the October the 31st deadline, no ifs or buts. In the last few moments, Jeremy Hunt says he's no longer Foreign Secretary and is returning to the backbenches. So too are Karen Brady, James Brokenshire, Chris Grayling, Damien Hines, Liam Fox, Greg Clark, Penny Mordaunt and Scottish Secretary David Mundell. LBC weather, dry, warm and muggy this evening and overnight, a low of 15 degrees. Tomorrow, hot and sunny, a high of 39 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Louise Knight, and there are long queues on the Clockwise M25 from 22 at London Coney through to Waltham Abbey at 26 after an accident now on the hard shoulder. Just off at junction 20, a serious accident means the A41 stays shut both ways, and there are delays of half an hour into town on the M4 towards an earlier accident at junction 5 for Langley. Tottenham High Road stays shut both ways at Bruce Grove with an accident, and on the north side of Vauxhall Bridge, just hearing that Vauxhall Bridge Road is partly blocked at Drummond Gate with an investigation. For the trains, London Overground can't run from Hackney Downs to Seven Sisters, London North Western have delays at Euston, and train passengers in London and the South East are being advised not to travel tomorrow because of the hot temperatures we're expecting.
The new Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. Follow it live on LBC.
People have always told me I can be a bit wary of modern things.
Very true.
So, when Jane suggested selling the house with purple bricks, I weren't happy.
No, you weren't.
You see, I don't like technology. I don't like the internet. I don't like moving house. I don't like their adverts. I don't like purple.
Luckily, I don't listen to him, and our estate agent Emma were perfect. She gave us her actual mobile number. She was always available.
Fine, they were great. Still don't like purple.
Purple bricks. There's no need for commisery.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing services cost extra. See website for more details.
LBC.
How are you? How are you really? Modern life can be busy, and sometimes it's easier to look after others before looking after yourself. But there's only one you. And making small changes to your lifestyle now could improve your chances of staying healthier longer. So take the first step to a healthier you with our free How Are You quiz. See how you score and get personalised tips and support. From how to eat a little healthier to turning a 10-minute walk into exercise. Just search 1U.
Summer's finally here, and at the BMW Summer event, we're celebrating with a wide range of models available to drive away today, so your perfect BMW couldn't be closer. Search BMW Summer Event or visit your local BMW centre before the end of August to find your perfect BMW and explore our range of tailored finance options. BMW UK Limited is a credit broker, not a lender. BMW Finance is subject to status for UK customers over 18 only. Guarantees may be required. T's and C's apply.
Is 2019 the most confusing year ever? Fake lips, speaking fake news, eating fake meat. Let's put it to a vote. After vote, after vote. But are we being listened to by our home devices?
No.
They don't have the answer. Get past the confusion with the Confused.com Beat Your Renewal Quote Guarantee. If you can't beat your renewal quote, you get the difference plus £20. Don't be confused. Be Confused.com. T's and C's online, single annual policies only.
Business like a boss with a new mobile plan from 3. All the usual stuff you could get from a phone contract like unlimited data, plus 6 months of exclusive benefits from our partners. Spend less time accounting and more time businessing with FreshBooks. Build a website designed to work perfectly on a mobile with Wix. Get a receptionist that's not your nan at WeWork. And nothing says, I've got this, like a business card from Moo. Get the mobile plan that actually helps your business, because 3 means business. Search 3.co.uk/business for further details.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show, live from New York. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Some big changes, some big ministerial changes taking place in number 10 as we speak. Jeremy Hunt quits as Foreign Secretary. Jeremy Wright sacked as Culture Secretary. David Mundell sacked as Scottish Secretary. Karen Bradley out as Northern Ireland Secretary. James Brokenshire out as Community Secretary. Caroline Noakes sacked as Immigration Minister. Damien Hines sacked as Education Secretary. Chris Grayling out as Transport Secretary. Liam Fox sacked as International Trade Secretary. Greg Clark sacked as Business Secretary. Penny Mordaunt sacked as Defence Secretary. And Hammond, Stewart and Gork, of course, already preeminently Remainers all had said they would not serve under Boris. So let's try and find out, with all these people disappearing, who is actually in. Theo Usherwood, our political editor. So we started off yesterday, I think, with the Chief Whip, didn't we?
Yes, we did. Mark Spence, good evening, Nigel, again. The Nottinghamshire farmer replacing Julian Smith as Chief Whip. Now, Boris Johnson has actually finished the sackings. He has gone back to Downing Street to make some appointments. When he gets there, he will find Sajid Javid, who is currently Home Secretary, waiting for him, and he is expected to make Mr Javid Chancellor of the Exchequer, moving in next door to number 11. And of course, in any government, the relationship between Prime Minister and Chancellor is absolutely critical. Also, there will be Dominic Raab, who is expected to take up the post of Foreign Secretary. He was, of course, previously Brexit Secretary until he resigned that post just before Christmas. And then finally, Priti Patel, International Development Secretary. She also she was formerly International Development Secretary, and she is expected to take up the post of Home Secretary, a key role, especially with Brexit and all of the security potentially implications, things that can be found, solutions can be found for, she will hope.
And one of the most loyal supporters of Boris for long months now has, of course, been Jacob Rees-Mogg. Any rumours or whispers about him?
Jacob Rees-Mogg has been tipped for a couple of posts from what we've seen. Possible Tory party chairman. That would mean replacing Brandon Lewis, who is the current party chairman and a key ally of Theresa May. Boris Johnson will want his own man in that post, especially if he is going to try and fight a general election. He doesn't want to form a close junior minister in the Home Office under Theresa May and friend of Theresa May running that job for him. So Jacob Rees-Mogg could possibly take up that role. The other role he might want to consider Jacob Rees-Mogg for would be at the Treasury as Chief Secretary to the Treasury, which is currently occupied by Liz Truss. Liz Truss, of course, is hoping for a promotion. She'd been hoping to take over at number 11, but failing that, she might be put into the Department for Business.
Thank you very much, Theo. Don't go away. Keep us updated with any more breaking news. So Boris, he'd been to Buckingham Palace. There was a very, very short period of time when we didn't have a Prime Minister because Mrs May was gone and Boris was about to be accepted by the Queen. But he came back to Downing Street and he gave, and as I say, I politically find it very tough to trust Boris. I see him flip and flop on all sorts of things. But credit where it's due, this was a very uplifting speech. Let's listen to a bit of Boris on the steps of number 10.
And it is, of course, vital at the same time that we prepare for the remote possibility that Brussels refuses any further to negotiate. And we are forced to come out with no deal, not because we want that outcome, of course not, but because it is only common sense to prepare. And let me stress that there is a vital sense in which those preparations cannot be wasted, and that is because under any circumstances we will need to get ready at some point in the near future to come out of the EU customs union and out of regulatory control. Fully determined at last to take advantage of Brexit, because that is the course on which this country is now set. With high hearts and growing confidence, we will now accelerate the work of getting ready. And the ports will be ready, and the banks will be ready, and the factories will be ready, and business will be ready, and the hospitals will be ready, and our amazing food and farming sector will be ready and waiting to continue selling ever more, not just here, but around the world. And don't forget that in the event of a no-deal outcome, we will have that extra lubrication of the £39 billion.
Quite right.
And whatever deal we do, we will prepare this autumn for an economic package to boost British business and to lengthen this country's lead as the number one destination in this continent for overseas investment. And to all those who continue to prophesy disaster, I say yes, there will be difficulties, though I believe that with energy and application they will be far less serious than some have claimed. But if there is one thing that has really sapped the confidence of business over the last 3 years, it is not the decisions we have taken, it is our refusal to take decisions. And to those who say we cannot be ready, I say, do not underestimate this country.
Well, I must say, I think in tone and in style, that was really very, very good indeed. Quite how he thinks he's going to deliver Brexit, how he's going to negotiate with Brussels, I don't know. How he's going to get no deal through Parliament, I don't know. Optimism that Boris Johnson is showing, is it justified? Well, I think it's welcome, but not fully justified. That's what I would say. Let's ask Alan, a new caller from Belfast. Good evening, Alan.
Good evening, Nigel. Thanks for taking my call. Really appreciate it.
Not a bit. So he said very clearly today, he's won. It wasn't a campaign pledge. He said it as Prime Minister that the Irish backstop was unacceptable in all circumstances.
Yes, I find it strange. I mean, I was listening to him there just before, coming on the show, and he sounded very good and reasonable. He almost convinced me, but I think the almost is important. The fact that he kind of backtracked on May's deal on the third reading really sort of shows you that he would just change depending on the situation. There's no real principles and hardcore kind of conviction there, and I think you've got that, but I think Boris really is a political player who would just swap sides. But I do think there's a downside if he does that people will see that politics is really broken, like you've been saying, but also that it will damage him personally and damage the whole Brexit cause, really.
I'm very struck, Alan, by the words that he's used today, that he really is marching the Tory army up to the top of the hill, isn't he? He's saying this is it. And then if he marches them back down again, it would be a catastrophe for him and the party. There isn't much question about that. But you thought style-wise, you agreed with me that he was pretty good.
I think he was kind of interesting, and he got the whole statesman Churchillian thing going on there, and he was serious and witty, and he ticked all the boxes. So it was entertaining, and if it was true, it would be super that a politician keeps their word.
I agree with you totally, Alan. I wish him well. I hope he does, but I have my doubts. Thank you for your call. Evening, Nigel. A brilliant opening speech from Boris, which put the optimism back in our hands. I'm very pleased that Priti Patel is back as well, says John from Wales. Johnson is going to show us that you can have your cake and eat it, be out of the EU, but maintain all the benefits. Optimism, basically hoping it works out, says James. Well, he's not going to have cake and eat it. Of that, I am certain. For the first time in politics, we have the right man in a job, says Peter. Some of you are convinced here. It's good to hear Boris speaking optimistically regarding Brexit, considering we've had 3 years of scaremongering, says Mark in Manchester. And that's it. You know, May was so desperately depressing, even when she tried to be upbeat and optimistic. It was good somebody being optimistic. I still think he's going to have huge problems delivering. I agree with Adam from Belfast that he doesn't really believe in this. It isn't part of his core and his being, and he's capable of changing on a whim. Go to Earl from Wrexham. Good evening, Earl.
Good evening, Nigel, and thank you very much for taking my call on this very special and, let's hope, memorable for all the right reasons day.
Well, it'll be memorable either way, Earl, I'm sure of that. But were you convinced, Earl?
Well, I'm naive, I'm gullible, I'm like I don't know how many other people. Yeah, I mean, of all the people that the Conservative Party could field that I'm aware of, because I'm not an expert, obviously Boris Johnson, he's an entity and an enigma into himself. I've laughed many times, have I got news for you with him, blah, blah. I know he's obviously a very capable, able gentleman. He has to be for where he is now. And, I don't want to be pessimistic. I've had 3 years of pessimism. I want to be optimistic. Yes. And he's done a brilliant performance tonight for us.
I don't disagree at all. I think he was really very, very good today, and I thought he spoke well, and there weren't all the usual Borisisms, weren't the stutters, the majammers, and the stammers. He actually spoke well. He'd obviously prepared it carefully. Is he going to deliver, Earl? Do you believe it all?
Nigel, I can just wish and pray. You might have a more informed opinion about that because of obviously what you do for a living and what I do. I hope and pray to the Lord Almighty that he does good. And one thing, incidentally, with you and himself and Donald Trump, which I love, and I've just finished reading it, the Second World War again, you're all Churchill fanatics, and there has to be hope. If that's the case, there has to be hope, whoever he is.
There has to be hope is a very, very good way of ending that call. I thank you. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It is now 6:30 and time for the news with Philip Christakos.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson says do not underestimate this country as he calls for an end to self-doubt, asking the nation to look at the opportunities Brexit presents.
The time has come to act, to take decisions, to give strong leadership and to change this country for the better. And though the Queen has just honoured me with this extraordinary office of state, my job is to serve you, the people.
Earlier this afternoon, Theresa May left Downing Street for the last time as Prime Minister with this praise for Mr Johnson.
I repeat my warm congratulations to Boris on winning the Conservative leadership election. I wish him and the government he will lead every good fortune in the months and years ahead. Their successes will be our country's successes, and I hope that they will be many. Their achievements will build on the work of nearly a decade of Conservative or Conservative-led government.
Right now, Prime Minister Johnson is finalising his cabinet. There's no place so far for his leadership rival Jeremy Hunt, who is no longer Foreign Secretary and will sit instead on the backbenches. LBC weather, dry, warm and muggy this evening and overnight, a low of 15 degrees. Tomorrow, hot and sunny, a high of 39 degrees.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast, LBC.
Stanley Johnson joins me now. We know his strength, infectious enthusiasm, extraordinary charisma. People's faces light up when they see him. You're his dad. Does he have weaknesses?
I remember once watching him at the age of 40 playing rugger for the Daily Telegraph, and he got a ball in the line out and just smashed through. Is that a weakness? Brutality and determination? Yes. I doubt it. Combining it with huge intelligence and a sense of humour, you might have a winning combination.
As the UK wakes up to a new Prime Minister, join Nick Ferrari for a breakfast special starting tomorrow morning from 6.
With Xero, get your business digital ready with Xero accounting software.
LBC.
You know their names. Now, find out who they are. Listen to Full Disclosure with James O'Brien, an insightful podcast featuring rare, candid conversations with the biggest names in politics, entertainment, and sport. And while James gives you a look into their lives, keep an eye on yours with Blink, wireless home security cameras you can monitor on your smartphone. Full Disclosure with James O'Brien. New episodes every Monday, thanks to Blink home security cameras.
Would you and your business benefit from a personal approach from your accountant? At Barnes Rofe, of course, our partners have the technical skills needed to offer you first-class audit, tax and accounting advice. But most importantly, We'll work closely with you to help your business grow long term. Perhaps it's time to see what we can do for you. Arrange your free consultation at barnesrofe.com. Barnes Rofe, clever accountants for business.
Here's a question. Will you bask in the cobalt Caribbean or sleep beneath the ice cliffs of Alaska? And which view will you sip your afternoon tea to? The New York skyline or the Norwegian fjords? And then what? To dine, to dance, to swim, or to simply promenade? Or perhaps you prefer to enjoy nothing. Not even a cloud between you and the moon. Nothing. Except your every need. Sail beyond your imagination. Visit cunard.com for exclusive offers on selected voyages. ABTA and ATOL protected.
I want to live, not merely survive. And I won't give up my dream of life that keeps me alive. I gotta be me. I gotta be me.
This summer, there's even more to sing about with the Skoda SUV event. Because now you can buy an award-winning SUV with £1,000 off, on top of our existing finance offers. Search Skoda SUV event for more details. Available on new Karoq and Kodiaq models excluding SE technology. Ordered between the 25th of July and the 7th of August and registered by the 31st of December 2019. Customer savings applied to on the road price on retail invoice. Retail customers, UK residents and 18 plus only. Excludes Channel Islands and Isle of Man. While stocks last. Offer not available with contract hire.
The Nigel Farage Show, live from New York, only on LBC.
Optimism from the new Prime Minister, and maybe a bit of that energy that Donald Trump had talked about as well, as Boris gives his first speech as Prime Minister and proceeds to sack a very large number of ministers, new ones about to be appointed. That breaking news you'll get from LBC all through the course of this evening. But was that optimism justified? Well, some very mixed views on this. Alan says, Boris is only saying this stuff because you're breathing down his neck. But Paul says, we've got our own Donald Trump. He's going to put the country first. Excellent speech from Boris, but I'm not feeling so daft as to voting for him, says Tony in Bromley. D, I think, cheers us all up a bit. D from Southend says, the way I feel, I'm so used to being disappointed by the government that I'm prepared for it to happen again. But at least with Boris, we'll have a laugh. Let's go to Glasgow and speak to Colin. Colin, good evening.
Hi, Nigel. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I was actually at Edinburgh when you came up at the Edinburgh Brexit Party rally there. So,
OK, terrific. So you are a Brexiteer then, Colin?
Yes, definitely, 100%. And you were right about, you said about SNP voters voting Brexit Party. I was shocked that next door neighbour and a long-term friend of SNP actually voted Brexit Party in the last Euro election. So you were absolutely spot on there.
It's very interesting. This whole question of Europe actually splits all of the existing traditional political parties. But Colin, as a Brexiteer, were you encouraged by Boris's words today?
Yeah, I was, but I'm worried about the Brexit Party now. That you've done a great job, but will you cost us Brexit if it goes to a referendum? Because the Remain MPs, they're doing their best to make it hard. They'll try to stop us from leaving. Even Joe Swinson even said that even if we won the second referendum, if we had this independent EU referendum, she still wouldn't accept the leave winning again.
I find it absolutely astonishing. You could have said that. I really do. Astonishing.
Sorry.
But Colin, explain to me, what's your concern about the Brexit Party?
The Brexit Party might split the vote, right?
Split the vote. Wow.
The Leavers. That's my main worry, and might allow the Lib Dems, even worse, Labour.
Colin, I've got breaking news. I'm going to go. I'll return to the point. I have to let you go. Over to Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor. What's the news, Theo?
Sajid Javid, former Home Secretary, now has been appointed Chancellor of the Exchequer. He is going to be taking over from Philip Hammond, a former senior manager at executive at Deutsche Bank. He gets the big job as Boris Johnson's Chancellor. He ran against Boris Johnson, of course, got down to the final four before he dropped out, but immediately came out and backed Boris Johnson to be Prime Minister. So this is a reward for Mr. Javid taking over at the Treasury.
Yes, and Jared, of course, who did vote Remain, didn't he, in the referendum?
He did vote Remain. He was a lieutenant of George Osborne when George Osborne was Chancellor, but had quite a swift conversion after the referendum to taking up a position that he supported leaving the European Union. And he hasn't ever, since that referendum, ever equivocated on that. He is prepared to take the UK out of the European Union, and he is well respected, well liked, state school educated, and will show that Boris Johnson is willing to have a diverse and wants to promote a diverse cabinet.
Well, he's going to have that by the looks of it. Theo, keep us updated. We'll await news of Priti Patel, guessing very, very soon. OK, Colin said to me that he was worried the Brexit Party might split the Tory Party vote, but Brexit Party would say this. In Peterborough, where they were the challenger to Labour, and the Tories trailed in a distant third, it was the Tories who split the Brexit Party vote. So this argument actually go round in circles. Let's go to Ian, who's a new caller from Winchester. Good evening, Ian.
Yeah, hi there.
Hi there.
Yeah, Boris Johnson. I just don't understand how anyone can trust him, because he's said so many inconsistent and contradictory things in the past, and we all know he's always ached to be Prime Minister, and I just think he's a narcissist. And optimism, all the talk of optimism, I mean, like a used car salesman is very optimistic when I go to buy a car, so I just don't trust him.
Does he, Ian, does he remind you of Donald Trump in any way?
Yeah.
Because those criticisms that you've made are very similar to the criticisms that get made of Trump in America.
Yeah, and I wouldn't buy a car from Donald Trump either.
Right, OK. Well, look, on the inconsistency, I have to say, even on the European Union, we saw him twice, didn't we, vote against, and then once vote for Mrs May's deal. So, OK, Ian, it's a thumbs down from Ian. Let's go to Deborah, who's a new caller from Lowestoft in Suffolk. Good evening, Deborah.
Hello, Nigel, and good evening to you.
Welcome.
Boris is saying all the right things. He's appointing all the right people, and he's clearly gearing up for a general election. But I used to vote for the Conservatives without really considering the local MP. I voted for the party, but over the last 3 years, I paid very close attention to our local MP. In a town where 63% voted to leave, yet he consistently voted Remain and for Theresa May's deal. Is a true Remainer. So no matter what Boris achieves, I can never vote for our local Conservative MP. I'm pretty sure that I'm not alone in that. And I'm left with a full of who knew that our MPs were so hopeless and self-serving, and who knew how tied we were to the EU. But I simply can't vote for our local.
You are living, Deborah, in an extraordinary county, because every single Conservative seat in Suffolk voted to leave, and every single Suffolk Conservative MP was a Remainer. So you are living right in the middle of one of those areas where trust in politicians has completely broken down, and it's going to take more than an optimistic speech from Boris Johnson to change the way you feel.
Exactly, because we are a fishing town. The damage is absolutely done. There's no recovering. Now Boris could pull an absolute rabbit out of the hat, get us out on a great deal. The trust has completely gone, and I will never vote Conservative again. I never knew that the way that they behaved. It's been shocking to me, absolutely shocking.
Interesting. Deborah, thank you very much. And Deborah, one of millions who has lost faith in the whole thing. Steve says, Nigel, I sense your negativity against Johnson started when he talked about putting you back in the box. No, Steve, my negativity about Johnson started as soon as, despite all that he'd said, and twice voted against Mrs May's new treaty, and then he voted for it. I simply could not believe it. And then, hard on the heels of that, he started talking again about amnesties for illegal immigrants. Boris, nobody in British politics has flip-flopped more than Boris. Today, he sounded resolute and firm. He was optimistic, which is great. We do need a bit of that. But the track record, I find, pretty worrying. Boris's speech sounded like a good election speech, but his battle is going to be with the Remainers, still entrenched in Parliament, says Malcolm in Surrey. Yes, Malcolm, and many of them entrenched his own party, and that perhaps is where the fiercest opposition is actually going to come from. Alex is a caller from Bantry in the Republic of Ireland. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Nigel. Good evening.
Good evening.
I want to congratulate you because he has absolutely mirrored himself on you and the policies as well. And you hear every single word of it.
Yeah, the infrastructure spending in the north and all of it, yeah.
Yeah, everything. And Wi-Fi on the trains.
I know. All the things we've been talking about, I've been talking about, and now Boris wants to do all of them. Well, that's not a bad thing, Alex, though, is it?
No, it's excellent. But I just want you to know, and I want everybody to know, that you have achieved an amazing amount, and we wouldn't be in this position without your efforts over the years.
Well, thank you. And look, I'm really very happy. I'm really happy, Alex. I just want him to deliver. That's the problem. Alex, I've got to go because I'm crossing back to Theo Usherwood for the next announcement. Hi.
Priti Patel has been confirmed as Home Secretary. She was previously International Development Secretary, but of course she lost that job about a year ago when she was accused of running back channels with members of the Israeli government and Israeli businessmen during a family holiday. She told Theresa May that she wasn't guilty of that. She then went on a trip as part of her brief to Uganda and then had to fly back and admit that in fact those allegations were true, and she was promptly sacked. Now she has been promoted from the backbenches to take up the post of Home Secretary, and the first female Asian heritage MP to do so.
Yes, and of course she is part of the awkward squad when it comes to being a Leaver. One of only 28 MPs who voted 3 times against Mrs May's deal. So this is real hardcore Remainer, isn't it? A Leaver.
She is part of that grouping within the ER European Research Group, the ERG. She has not pulled her punches during the campaign to leave the European Union. She was part of the Vote Leave campaign and ever since. And it is a striking appointment from Boris Johnson. Some will see it as being quite high risk, given her past, as I was referring to there, her past as International Development Secretary. But it is a noteworthy appointment, and it shows, Nigel, that Boris Johnson wants to put key levers, people who actually are prepared to stick with him when it comes to that October the 31st deadline, into the most important positions. Now, we're expecting Dominic Raab to take up the post of Foreign Secretary. In that respect, that is the way it's heading.
It really does look like he's putting everything on black as opposed to red. That's how it looks. But hey, after that split cabinet we had, at least we know where we're going here, or do we?
I think we know where we're going now. Yes, there's no... Look, Nigel, you'll remember in 2016, Theresa May appointed Liam Fox, David Davis, Boris Johnson into key posts within the cabinet. And she tacked back and forth. And we did 2 years of, 2.5 years of tacking back and forth until we got to Chequers, and then we had 2 resignations. Boris Johnson isn't going down that same route. He will make an effort to get some changes, take out the backstop from the withdrawal agreement over the course of the summer. August, if he doesn't get it, then it's no deal, isn't it?
No. Theo, thank you. Let's go to the news. It's 6:46. Philip Chrysakos.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson has made his first cabinet appointments, Sajid Javid as Chancellor and Priti Patel as Home Secretary. As Mr Johnson finalises his cabinet, there's no space for Northern Ireland Secretary Karen Bradley, James Brokenshire, Chris Grayling, Damien Hines, Liam Fox, Greg Clark, Penny Mordaunt and Jeremy Hunt. Earlier, Prime Minister Johnson told critics of Brexit, the doubters, doomsters and gloomsters, that they're all wrong. LBC weather, dry, warm and muggy this evening and overnight, a low of 15 degrees. Tomorrow, hot and sunny, a high of 39 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm J-Louise Knight, and the clockwise M25 still struggling towards 26 at Waltham Abbey. Following an accident earlier, there are delays on the Kent stretch of about half an hour heading anti-clockwise into the Dartford tunnels. And just off the M25 at junction 20, a serious accident means the A41 stays shut both ways. If you're heading out of town on the A12 anytime soon, it's looking slow towards the Green Man roundabout at Whipps Cross, where a car's broken down. Tottenham High Road stays shut both ways at Bruce Grove following a serious accident, and the South section particular is partly blocked at the Catford Gyratory with another accident. Onto the trains, London Overground remains suspended, Hackney Downs to Seven Sisters, and train passengers in London and the South East are being advised not to travel tomorrow because of the heat.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
Under Harold Macmillan, it was the night of the long knives. Under Boris Johnson, it's the night of the long meat cleavers. We'll find out who's replaced the 15 cabinet ministers he sacked after 7.
Ian Dale on LBC.
Parents, you know your child. You know the way they learn is different to others. And Inter High School knows this too. For 15 years, Inter High has specialised in providing a fully interactive, tailored online school, supporting your child to achieve their best results from primary school age through to A-level. To discover more about Inter High School, join their next online open evening on the 7th of August. Register at interhigh.co.uk.
Renewing your tax credits is too important to forget, so here's an unforgettable reminder.
Renew your tax credits now. It's really, really important.
Time is running out. Renew your tax credits by the 31st of July or your payments will stop. Go to gov.uk/manage your tax credits.
Renew now!
With OneNet on Vodafone Business, you can make and receive landline calls from your mobile, meaning your office could be here. Or here. Or more likely, here.
Hello, Saunders Designs. How can I help?
Your office can be anywhere with our OneNet virtual landline. Available on our new and limited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone Business.
Max download upload speeds apply to data. Coverage may vary. Unlimited and OneNet terms at vodafone.co.uk/terms.
Divorce can be expensive. It affects your finances, assets, home, savings, pension, and most of all, your relationship with your children. It's probably one of the toughest times you'll ever go through. Cordell & Cordell understands these issues and helps men maximise their roles in their children's lives. Call now on 0330 60 60 161 or visit cordellcordell.co.uk. Office in central London. A partner men can count on.
Summer's finally here, and at the BMW Summer Event, we're celebrating with a wide range of models available to drive away today, so your perfect BMW couldn't be closer. Search BMW Summer Event or visit your local BMW centre before the end of August to find your perfect BMW and explore our range of tailored finance options. BMW UK Limited is a credit broker, not a lender. BMW Finance is subject to status for UK customers over 18 only. Guarantees may be required. T's and C's apply.
Turn to The Telegraph for clarity as Boris Johnson settles into number 10. Can he turn his now famous eminently feasible into something that's everybody pleasable, with plans on a hard border, a hard bargain, or a hard Brexit? Turn to the team who know him best. Subscribe now at telegraph.co.uk.
Is 2019 the most confusing year ever? Fake lips, speaking fake news, eating fake meat. Let's put it to a vote. After vote, after vote. But are we being listened to by our home devices?
No.
They don't have the answer. Get past the confusion with the Confused.com Beat Your Renewal Quote Guarantee. If you can't beat your renewal quote, you get the difference plus £20. Don't be confused. Be Confused.com. T's and C's online, single annual policies only.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show, live from New York. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
An optimistic, upbeat speech from Boris Johnson on the steps of number 10, and the Irish backstop's got to go. And we are leaving. We'd rather not leave with no deal, but we're perfectly prepared to do so if those people in Brussels won't play ball. And the appointment of Priti Patel, one of the Eurosceptic Awkward Squad, and she's now the Home Secretary. We're talking about the Awkward Squad, the 28 who 3 times, correctly in my opinion, voted against Mrs May's new treaty. I'm joined now by Peter Bone, Conservative MP for Wellingborough and Rushton. Good evening, Peter.
Good evening, Nigel.
So are you pleased with Boris's performance today? Do you believe it?
Absolutely. I was one of Boris's earliest supporters, and he's going to deliver Brexit on the 31st of October, with or without a deal. And today's cabinet reshuffle or massacre, perhaps is a better
It
word
certainly
for it,
is.
shows that he's going to put people around him that want to do it. And putting Pretty in as in the cabinet is very sensible, and I think everyone is feeling much more upbeat. Last night I went to a 1922 committee meeting, Conservative MPs, and for the first time in years, a Prime Minister addressed that committee, and I felt happier after that person had addressed it than before. And that there's a feeling of optimism here.
Now, how do you feel, Peter Bone, about Dominic Cummings coming into number 10 and much of the Vote Leave team coming in to number 10 to be Boris's big advisors on Brexit?
Well, as you know, Nigel, we worked together on Grassroots Out, and we weren't part of Vote Leave. But of course, they led the campaign, and we won the referendum. So that reinforces, I suppose, the absolute priority of getting out on the 31st of October. I mean, it's going to be an interesting ride.
No, it is.
But
Peter, can I leave you there for a moment? I've got some breaking news. Theo Usherwood, what next?
Dominic Raab has been appointed Foreign Secretary. It was the big job he was after, taking the place of Jeremy Hunt, who, of course, had to step down from the cabinet after he didn't want to take Penny Mordaunt's job at Defence. Mr Raab is, of course, a former Brexit Secretary, having worked up until Christmas, just before Christmas, when he resigned that post, having taken over from David Davis. He is a protege of Mr. Davis, and he was in the leadership contest, Nigel, really the closest rival to Boris Johnson on the issue of Brexit. He was the only one of those 13 candidates at one stage who was prepared to outgun Boris Johnson on Brexit.
He was the most Brexit. He really was. Thank you, Theo. Thank you. Peter Bone, your reaction to Dominic Raab becoming the Foreign Secretary?
Fantastic. He's a real believer in Brexit. I would just add that Esther McVey was as well in those candidates. But, I mean, we've seen Liz Truss going to Downing Street. Things are looking very happy here, and I can see across the road some Liberal Democrat MPs looking rather sad. So that's good.
I do remember, Peter, in late 2016, you telling me it was going to be okay, that Mrs May was going to deliver Brexit, and she told us 108 times that she would deliver Brexit, and we know what an absolute catastrophe that turned out to be. On March the 29th, didn't leave. Why is it different this time?
The difference is one was Mrs Way and one is Boris Johnson. I mean, you know, there's no two ways about it. Mrs Way deceived us 108 times. I mean, yeah, I did believe her when she said that we were going to bring back control to this country.
I know you did, yeah.
And I felt very, very let down, and I was quite outspoken about the need to remove her. We've now got Boris Johnson. We're going to get a good Brexit, but of course people like me will make sure that we get the best profitable Brexit, and that we'll be holding the new Prime Minister to account, as you would expect.
Well, I think you're going to have to, because don't forget, he was with you twice in those lobbies, wasn't he? Voting against that worst deal in history. And on the third occasion, Boris changed his mind and voted for it. So you're going to have to try and keep pressure on him, I think.
Well, Boris voted for it with a very, very heavy heart, as did some other very good Brexit.
Does that matter?
Well, there were reasons for it.
If they haven't got the guts, if they haven't the courage of their convictions, why would I believe, Peter, that Boris is a true Brexiteer? He votes for something that clearly isn't Brexit.
Well, the dilemma for people in that vote was they thought that if they didn't vote for it, we might lose Brexit altogether. That was the problem. Now, I took a different view and I voted against it. But that was the real dilemma there was. And you know, whether it was Dominic Raab or Esther or Boris, or even Jacob.
Peter, there'll be more dilemmas. There'll be more dilemmas between now and the 31st of October, won't there?
There will be, and that's why people inside Parliament and people outside Parliament will make sure that this government doesn't lose its focus on Brexit. The great thing is, it looks like we're going to have ministers to a man and woman who believe in Brexit. And goodness me, that was not what we had with Mrs May.
No, well, I have to say, the most optimistic, upbeat, happy interview I've ever heard with Peter Bone. Peter, thanks very much indeed for coming on. Back over to Theo, hello.
Just a quick added detail for the Dominic Raab announcement as Foreign Secretary. Mr. Raab has been announced as First Secretary of State, so he is in effect the de facto Deputy Prime Minister. He will be standing in for Boris Johnson when Boris Johnson is out of the country at PM Qs. That gives an indication of the importance that Boris Johnson is placing on Dominic Raab as Foreign Secretary and as his most senior cabinet minister.
Presumably, Theo, the Northern Irish post is quite important too.
Yes, it will be very important, but in all honesty, Nigel, it remains to be seen whether Boris Johnson can secure any realistic changes to the backstop. And the price is now quite high, given the promises that Mr. Johnson made during the campaign to take out the backstop firstly, and then also he has linked the £39 billion divorce bill to getting a trade deal, which of course Theresa May didn't exactly shout from the rooftops, but when she negotiated that £39 billion sum, it wasn't contingent on getting a trade deal. So Boris Johnson's saying that if we leave without a deal, we're not going, and he said it, we're not, he said it's not going to we're not going to be paying that £39 billion.
It's an argument, Theo, with which I'm very familiar, I can assure you. Thank you very much indeed, Theo, for all your help over the course of the last hour. Well, day one of Boris as Prime Minister, a good speech, an uplifting speech, an optimistic speech, a determined speech, but coming from a man who has flipped and flopped more than anyone I can think of in frontline politics in our country. He has surrounded himself with a team of Brexiteers. I think today we got a bit closer to an autumn general election. That's my feeling. I'll be back tomorrow at 6 o'clock. At 10 tonight, it's Tom Swarbrick, but up next, it's Ian Dale.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Penny Mordaunt, sacked. Greg Clark, sacked. Liam Fox, sacked. Chris Grayling, quit. Damien Hines, sacked. Caroline Noakes, sacked. James Brokenshire, sacked. Karen Bradley, sacked. David Mundell, sacked. Jeremy Wright, sacked. Jeremy Hunt resigns. Claire Perry resigns. Mel Stride, sacked. It's not the night of the long knives, this. It's the night of the long meat cleavers. Boris Johnson is currently forming his government. Sajid Javid is the new Chancellor. Priti Patel is the new Home Secretary. Dominic Raab is the new Foreign Secretary.